Hello, I've posted some materials about library research, and I wanted to create a kind of overview of literary research in particular using library research databases, and also maybe try to cover a little bit about accessing those databases, which I cover some in some other videos that I'm making available as well. And then also um getting into a little bit about sort of how to come up with your topic and search terms and some things like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our D2L and see what resources are there already. All right, so for the Shakespeare class I'm using as the example here, I've got a major assignments module and this conference paper assignment. And so right now, there's the assignment prompt itself. I've got a handout on academic research, this video talking about close reading, a link to get you into the library research databases relatively quickly and easily. And then I've got the first research tutorial video. Now, this particular video is one of several that I created for my composition courses that cover using some of the same research databases that we'll be using, but they're very focused on, covering sort of social, political, historical topics, current events, and things that can be very different than, literary research, especially any kind of literary history. But even if you were working on, modern novels or short stories or something, um, you'd still be looking at some different databases than what you might use if you were looking at doing a paper on Black Lives Matter, for instance. So I want to make sure that I cover some of that here now to make, so that um, what to do and sort of how to approach specifically doing research for a literary research paper for any literature class, but particularly mine. This should work well for others too, though. So I'm going to start with, let's go ahead and take a quick look at this assignment prompt and make sure you've got a good sense of the assignment that we're working on here. All right, so I'm asking for an 8 to 10 page conference style paper. And what do I mean by conference style paper? That's really referring to the kind of length and depth of it, right? So 8 to 10 pages, if you were writing a paper to actually present in an academic conference, in any field in English or the humanities in general, you'd usually be looking at a 10 page essay because you tend to read 2 pages. What is it? It's because you've got 20 minutes to present, if you're part of a conference panel, 20 minutes to read a paper, and it usually takes 2 minutes per page. So 10 pages, 20 minutes. You're generally looking at a 10 page essay for that. So that gives you a sense of sort of scope, right? And I've also given you some examples of conference papers, conference length papers. But that's really what that's referring to. An original analytical argument based on your close reading of a play and including a properly formatted works cited page. This should be a research driven essay with a minimum of 5 scholarly sources. So those two sentences together, right? Analytical argument, your close reading. So you're coming up with an argument, an analysis of one of the texts that we've read. And then you need to incorporate some additional secondary sources to help you expand that analysis and refine it and, sort of enter into a conversation about the play and whatever aspect of the play you're focusing on, right? So I'm strongly encouraging you to sort of start with a close reading. And that's why I've given you some resources that talk about how to do close reading analysis. And then after you've got maybe a few pages looking at a speech or a short conversation or something, you get some ideas of what you might want to focus on. And then you start looking for secondary sources that can help you add, expand, refine what you want to say about whatever aspect of the play you're wanting to focus on, right? And so your thesis statement you're going to be coming up with, that the development of that should be a reciprocal process where you want to think about, what are you really interested in one of the plays and one of the texts that we've read. Maybe some of the issues we've been talking about and you've already had some readings on: race and Titus Andronicus, sexuality or gender and sexuality, or just gender in Twelfth Night, or really gender in any of the plays that we've read. Though certainly some of Shakespeare's early plays have very few women characters in them, but they can still be very significant characters, right? So any of those kinds of things. And lots of other stuff too. Like ultimately, even a fairly minor character like Feste in Twelfth Night, the clown, our edition, I think, just repeatedly uses the speech prefix clown for Feste, which is kind of unusual and a little strange because people recognize Feste as the clown in Twelfth Night. But Feste's not that major of a character. And yet, if you were interested in working on Feste and doing some kind of focus on that particular character in that play, you will be able to find lots of secondary scholarship talking about Feste in Twelfth Night. Or maybe, talking about Shakespeare's clowns more generally with a section of it that would be focusing on Feste. So there are lots and lots of possibilities for topics. You want to think about what are you particularly interested in already. Maybe doing some analytical work, close reading work on a passage, speech, conversation in that play to sort of see what you can come up with on your own before you've started looking at secondary sources. But then as you're trying to develop a thesis statement, an argument, an analytical argument to make about the play, the topic that you're focusing on within that play, that's where those secondary sources, you should really have that kind of reciprocal process where you can narrow your search terms based on the kind of subtopic, that you're focusing on within a play. You're not just searching for everything that's ever been written on Twelfth Night, because it would be a lot. Or Hamlet. Hamlet's had more secondary scholarship written on that play than what has been written on probably any other literary output besides the Bible. There's been more written about Hamlet, just that one play, than has been written about all of Jane Austen's or Charles Dickens's or the Brontes novels, combined. Just massive amounts of stuff out there, which can be a really good thing, but it does mean that you want to try to narrow your search terms, narrow your topic early, to help you find more relevant, interesting stuff. And then you want to use that stuff to help you refine your argument and what you want to say about the topic, right? And then you may need to go back and find more stuff, and you may need to refine your argument more as you find more stuff. And it gives you different ways of thinking about what it is that you've read, and maybe, ultimately changing the direction of your overall argument. So you want to try to be open to that. And I'm going to try to help out a little bit with that, in this video. So 5 scholarly sources. I advise using library research databases, JSTOR, MLA, International Bibliography, and Haley Catalog. You may not have any experience with these. The first research tutorial I posted covers how to use JSTOR, but it's using search terms that would be different from what you would use for Shakespeare. So I'll try to cover a little bit of that as well. The Haley catalog includes many ebooks. So if you're taking this course as a GW section, as part of the Career Plus, Union Plus program, and you're an online student, never been to CSU's campus, that's fine. You can still get access quickly and easily to the library's research databases, but you need to get that access. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to contact the library and tell them that you're an online student and that you need your barcode information to be able to access the library, and they will issue you a barcode. For regular students who've been on campus, they would have gotten their actual student ID, which has a barcode number on it, and the library would need that ID, and they would add the barcode from the student ID. But for online students, they're going to create the barcode for you. So you need to contact the library to do that. And you want to do that, as soon as possible, so you've got it done. And then just make sure you keep that barcode handy, because that's how you're going to access all the research databases that we have access to. And so library research databases are going to allow you to not just find better quality, academic quality materials, scholarly, peer-reviewed sources. They're also going to allow you to actually get them much more easily. So if you've ever used Google or even Google Scholar for any college research, a lot of times you may be able to find good sources. I mean, Google can make it really hard because it just gives you so much, and a lot of it's junk. But you can sometimes find really good sources, especially with something like Google Scholar that tends to be much narrower. But even then, most of the best sources you would find, you wouldn't be able to access them. You would click on an article and it would say, here's the first page. If you want to read this article, you have to pay us $5 or $8 to purchase this article. The library gives you free access to all that. As a university library that pays a lot of money for subscriptions to these databases. So I'm going to walk you through how to use these a little bit. Okay, page length. So, the 8 to 10 pages, that doesn't include notes or a works cited page. I've got due dates up here. So you should be hopefully working on at least starting to think about, your topic, maybe doing some writing, maybe starting to do some sort of close reading analysis after viewing some of those materials to help you do that. And then hopefully this will help you get into, getting started with the research part of things, right? You want to have at least 5 pages, 3 sources by the 27th if you can, or shortly thereafter, because we're going to be scheduling conferences for the week of the 27th. And so if you're still working on it and you schedule a conference with me for that Wednesday, which is probably like the 29th or 30th, that would be fine. You would just, still want to be like working on it and getting as much done as possible before we meet, and then just make sure you can send it to me so I can look at the most recent draft with you. Okay, and then after our conference, you'll need to revise based on our conversation. I'll give you some additional guidance in, what to add, what else to do, where to go, other sources you might incorporate. I'm also happy to help with sources before our conference. So if you're looking for sources and really trying to figure out what kind of articles that might be useful for this topic you're interested in, send me an email, send me a D2L message, whatever, and I can maybe help with that, point you to some stuff. I might even just be able to send you some things. Okay, so now I want to take you through how to use a couple of the research databases that are especially good for any kind of literature research paper. And how to use them, for this paper in particular, but also it'll be helpful for other projects you might have as well. So the research tutorial video I have here, as I mentioned before, it walks you through how to use JSTOR, but it's using it for topics that aren't for a literature paper. So I want to go ahead and show you that. This academic research handout walks you through 4 research databases. And for our purposes, the Haley catalog, OhioLink, and especially the EJC, which is the Electronic Journal Center through OhioLink, and JSTOR are going to be especially useful. Academic Search Complete is a good research database. It's a very sort of general one, so it can be really useful for any college course. But for a literature paper, a lot of times these other 3, JSTOR, Haley Catalog, and OhioLink, are going to be the most useful to you. So I want to try to walk through those a little bit in this video, not overlapping too much with the tutorial video, since it's also going to walk you through this, some of this as well, but again, to give you some more specific stuff to literature research papers. So I want to go to Library Research Database link, and you can also get to the this is the Haley catalog. We can get to our research databases here. You can also get to the same place if you go to Central State's homepage. Helps if I type correctly. If we go to Central State's homepage and then go down to library and these quick links at the bottom, and then this can get us to all of our databases also. So the first one I want to show you is JSTOR. I cover that in the tutorial video, but we'll do some literature this time. So I'm going to go to research databases and direct access. And it's not asking me for off-campus credentials yet, but I'll need them soon. So you got to make sure that you have your library access set up through Central State, and contact the library directly if you haven't done that yet. I want JSTOR, so that's going to be an I through K. It's near the bottom. So JSTOR is journal storage, and actually has a whole bunch of stuff, not just literature. It is really, really good for literature because it's got a lot of excellent top-tier journals for not just Shakespeare, but for any, sort of literary genre. And it gives you instant access to whatever you find with it, which is always really, really useful, especially in an online course, but even for any course in general can be really helpful. I think it's logging in here. Try one more time. Okay. So JSTOR, I'm just going to do this simple search here. So let's try, let's say you were interested in Ophelia and Hamlet. Okay, so I got a bunch of hits. It gives me image hits too, which is kind of a newer thing for JSTOR. This is a super famous painting, this John Everett Millais. But there's lots of sort of famous images of Ophelia, usually in the river. But we're most interested in the journal articles. So JSTOR is great for academic peer-reviewed journal articles, giving you access to stuff that you can't access just by finding it on Google. Even if you did find the good quality stuff on Google, which can be hard, it's not going to actually give you access to it. Now, some of these first hits, this is from 1964. Shakespeare Quarterly is still the preeminent top-tier journal in Shakespeare studies, but that's really old. 1990, 1963, 1994. So right away, I think I'm going to have some better luck if I limit this to some more recent work. So I'm just going to do 2000 for the year and apply. Okay, so I still have a bunch of hits to work with here. And some of this might be about Ophelia, the novel, or the film that have come out somewhat recently. Empathic Function from Mississippi Review, 2001. South Atlantic Review, Contextualizing Suicide. Ophelia's Loneliness. ELH is English Literary History. It's a very good journal. This new Ophelia they're talking about is probably the film adaptation of a novel that's focusing on Ophelia from Hamlet. Ophelia's Madness. Ophelia's Orphic Song, Old Lauds, Madness, and Hagiography. Hagiography is saints' lives. So it would be, connected to the story of saints in some way. Empowered Madness. So lots of stuff on Ophelia's Madness, which makes sense, right? Poetry, a fair amount on suicide, and then some of it on different adaptations and art based on Hamlet, but not Hamlet itself. So those probably aren't going to be quite as useful for us, right? So just looking at some of these, on our first page of hits, we're sort of all over the place, right? Some of these look really relevant, interesting, potentially helpful, and then some are like on completely other stuff, and that's fine. Because we've got some really useful things, right? Or at least potentially. So I would say, I just scrolled back to the top. Contextualizing the suicide of Ophelia. So if we were doing something about her madness, her mental health, her suicide, this could be very useful. So with JSTOR, right, if this sounds useful, I could go ahead and download it and just get the PDF. I can also look at it before I download it if I want to, and that's normally what I would do. So I'm going to click on the title. And this computer's running a little slow with this internet connection at the moment. Hopefully it speeds up here. Okay, so it gives you the title again, and it gives you all the journal information, and it even shows you the journal. So if we wanted to see other stuff that was published in that same issue, we could really easily. And that's really useful. At least one of the other articles that came up was from a Hamlet issue of a particular journal. So it could be useful to be able to see other articles from that same journal. And this is what the first page of the actual article looks like. It's a PDF scan of the article. So we could look at this, and this particular journal doesn't offer what's it called, an abstract. It's not giving us a summary up front to let us know what the whole article is going to be arguing. But we could look at the first page and get an idea. We could go ahead and go beyond the first page. We can click through and read the entire article this way if we wanted to. But I would probably look at the first page and try to get a sense of, is this something I would find useful or I might find useful? And if it is, then I would download it. So I'd go download PDF, accept the terms. That's just saying that I'm not going to turn around and try to sell this article and make money off of it when I've accessed it from this paid library research database. which I didn't have to pay for, but tuition money already has, because these are very expensive subscriptions that the library has to academic research databases. Sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. I've closed down the wrong tab. Try to go back to that. So I've downloaded the article. If I was on somebody else's computer, if I was at a library, I could email it to myself. I could put on a flash drive and still have it that way. I'm going to go back to results. If you use loneliness, like I said, ELH is an excellent journal. Summer 2015, so this is quite recent. Yeah, this sounds like it could be really potentially useful too. Again, depending on what topic, right? And there's no abstract here either, but introductory paragraphs are going to give us a good idea of what the article is about. So maybe I say, okay, this sounds like it's got potential too. I download that, right? And so you can go through and acquire multiple sources really quickly and easily. Now you still have to go back and like read through them and stuff, and they're peer-reviewed journal articles, so that can take some time to actually process through them. But finding them and accessing them really, really quick and easy with JSTOR. And with anything from Shakespeare, there's just going to be a ton of stuff. Also, since we get PDFs, we could do a search, a key terms or just a word search in the PDF for melancholy. And it would show us every time the word melancholy appears. Sorry, there's a laundry buzzer. It would show us every time the word melancholy appears in the article. And so that can be kind of a quick and easy way to find stuff that might be useful and relevant to us. Okay, so that's JSTOR, do some literature research. Let me, you don't have to do a character. You could do melancholy in Hamlet, or I'm trying to think other humors come up, what humors come up in which other plays. We haven't really talked about the humors much in any of our course materials yet. We could because we did talk about thou and thys and thines, and in 12th night it actually gives you that little bit that clearly identifies it as an insult, thouing someone you're not supposed to. So here again, there's a bunch of old stuff that's coming up, right? I'll limit this, just try 2,000, see what we get. Shakespeare Quarterly, 2005. That would be much better. Lesbian and Poetics in 12th Night. Missing Fathers. This is interesting because I was just about to do a search for character. So I think I mentioned earlier that you could do a somewhat minor character like Feste, right? The clown in 12th Night is a fairly minor character in that play. Probably more minor than Malvolio, for instance. We could do a search for Feste or for Malvolio, and you'd be able to find a significant number of peer-reviewed journal articles and scholarly book chapters and publications on Feste or on Malvolio or on Chiron and Demetrius, or any number of characters that might not seem like the main character in a play. There's so much that's been written and published on Shakespeare that there's a lot out there. And so if we use a good library research database that's only going to find us high quality, peer reviewed academic sources, then we can still get a lot to work with, but we can make sure it's a lot of good stuff to work with. And we can start to kind of narrow things down based on your topic. So that's why I tried thou, because we had talked about the thys and thous and thys and thines. And I was interested to see what might come up with for that. But we're getting all kinds of other stuff that just includes the word thou in it, which also makes sense. Let's go ahead and try. Oh, let's see. Remember, Titus Andronicus is certainly not an overly well-known and popular Shakespeare play. It's not his most obscure, but it's, you know, it's not Hamlet, right? The Nurse and Titus Andronicus, 548 hits. Revenge Trauma Theory in Titus, Rape and Revenge in Titus. Language of the Body in Titus, Roman Background of Titus, Performing Texts in Titus, Interpreting Childhood in Titus. And again, I haven't limited the time frame yet, so I'm getting a lot of various time frame covered here. And still lots of interesting things coming up with race in Titus too. Cultural politics of translation, blackness within. So if you were interested in race and Titus Andronicus, we've had some readings already, you know, that would give you a starting point, because you could look at that Caroline Sale article that I had you read. You could look at her references, her what sources she cites in there, and be able to find lots of other stuff talking about race in Titus Andronicus very easily. But you can also see, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff coming up right now. And I was searching for the nurse, not race in Titus Andronicus, but there's still a lot of that coming up, right? Okay, so this is JSTOR. Lots of really good peer-reviewed journal articles, and these are the kind of scholarly sources you should be using for a research paper on, you know, in a literature course. And you can find lots of them through this. Okay, let me go ahead and show you the Haley catalog as well, and then I'll probably stop this video there, because I think I've covered quite a bit already, and this is certainly going to end up being a lengthy-ish video at this point anyways. So I want to go back to research databases. Oh, actually, I want to get there the other way. I can get there through the link too. So the link in our D2L gets us here, and this is actually the Haley catalog. We can go to other research databases with that link. That's how I got to JSTOR. But I want to take you to the Haley catalog from CSU's homepage first. All right, so I'm going to go down to the library again. And so this time, instead of going to research databases, I'm going to go to Haley catalog. And so this search is for Central States Library, the Haley Q. Brown Library at CSU. And this is really good for academic books. And our library is a really small library because CSU is a small university with a small campus. Our library is quite small, so there's not a lot of holdings there. But one thing our library has been very good at is not just getting these really high quality, expensive subscriptions to research databases that are online, but also getting access to good ebooks. So even though the physical holdings, the books themselves that are at the library aren't that many, you can get a lot of good ebooks using our library's catalog. And so that's why I recommend this. So let's try, let's do something with Richard III. Price and Richard III. And go with the Roman numeral 3. Let's see if that helps. So there's not a whole lot of hits here, right? And none of these are directly connected to Shakespeare's play. So that's not very helpful. Maybe Vice is what threw it off. Let's try. I don't want to do a character. Let's see. Titus, 12th Night. Richard. We're doing Hamlet now. How about Polonius? Let's see what we get with Polonius. Search terms, being playful with search terms again, can really help get more sort of good stuff. So as you're thinking of your topic, being able to add some search terms can really help. So this only brought up one book, and so it took me straight into the book. From 1992, so this is older. And this is in the circulation stack. So this is actually at the library, but it's not an ebook. So still not that helpful to us. Nice. I can type. Interesting. Again, it just came up with one book. This is talking about acting, theory, and style, not just Hamlet and not just Renaissance drama, but it is an ebook, right? And it's 2020. So if we're interested in seeing if this could somehow be useful, we could check it out. I'd go to off campus. So this is where it needs those credentials. I have to be in the library system. If you're not yet, contact the library so you can get entered in their system, get that barcode number. Slow internet connection. So the great thing about academic books, it could be a scholarly monograph, which is that Berto States book from 92 that just came up on Hamlet. That's a scholarly monograph. So one scholar wrote that entire book on Hamlet. This is a, acting method. I mean, this is a little bit different, but it is still probably a scholarly monograph just written by this person. But a lot of scholarly books are edited collections, especially with Shakespeare. There are a lot of really good, very high quality scholarship and research that gets published in edited collections because the Shakespeare Association of America annual conference, often the individual seminars that are part of that will often produce edited collections. And so you can find really, really good research, high quality scholarship in edited collections, especially with Shakespeare. That's not quite this, but we got a table of contents here. I could kind of skim this and see. we could look at the first chapter or the introduction and see if it might be helpful. And with a book like this, it may, if there's anything useful here, it might just be from the introduction of the first chapter. It probably has an index. It does. So we could look at that index and we could look at the index and we could look at Hamlet and see, where does Hamlet appear in this book? And then we could just go straight to those pages, right? And so that would make it a really kind of quick, easy way to just find what's probably going to be useful to us. With an edited collection, each chapter in the collection is very much like a peer-reviewed journal article in a journal. And so you could end up just using one or two chapters or the introduction and not use anything else, and not even need to worry about consulting anything else from that collection. So don't feel like, an academic book as a source for a research paper means you need to read the whole thing. You definitely don't. That's not how scholars read when they, write peer-reviewed journal articles, and that's not how you need to read for a research paper. You just need to try to find what's going to be the most relevant for what you're working on, and then, work with it. You still might not agree with it, right? And that doesn't mean you just ignore everything that doesn't agree with you. Okay, so here's Hamlet, advice to the players on those pages, various other things on different pages. So we could go and just look at the pages that seem relevant, and we could kind of ignore the rest. And that would be the way to work smarter instead of harder here, right? So at this point, you want to try to find something from a book that's either a monograph or a collection. And if it's a collection, then a chapter from that is basically going to be the same as using a peer-reviewed journal article. You want to try to find something probably fairly recent, but some of the articles I've given you from the 80s and 90s are really significant, important articles, and they can still be really useful. So it's not like you have to limit yourself just to the last, 5 or 10 years or something like that. Hopefully that's been helpful. Let me go ahead and show you EJC just very briefly here, since that was the third. That's the OhioLink source that I've recommended. Get back to library. Okay, good. So this is the library's page from Central State's homepage. And that makes it easier to get into OhioLink because it's got its own link here. So I want the Electronic Journal Center. I think this link actually isn't going to work properly if I'm remembering right. No, it does not. So I can go to OhioLink. OhioLink is a consortium of academic and public libraries around the state of Ohio. And Central State, being in Ohio, is a member, as are, almost all universities and colleges in the state. And it's really, really useful to be able to get items that aren't at our library, but that might be at another library. So if you were in Ohio, this would be excellent for getting a source that would be in a physical book, right? If it wasn't in an ebook. For most of you, though, taking this course online, that's not going to be a great option for you. But EJC, the Electronic Journal Center, can still be really useful. So EJC is the part of OhioLink dealing with electronic journal articles. It's very much like JSTOR. It has a lot fewer holdings as part of its collections than JSTOR does. It's a much smaller database than JSTOR is. So try JSTOR first, is what I'm saying there. This is going to get you far fewer hits. What's good about EJC, though, the reason why I still recommend it is because you can still get some really good stuff using this, even if it's not as much. And it can actually get you more recent materials than JSTOR can. JSTOR contracts with the various hundreds or maybe thousands of journals that have contracts with JSTOR. There's a 1 year embargo on those materials. And so if you found an article from Shakespeare Quarterly from 6 months ago that sounded really useful, you won't be able to get into JSTOR yet. You'd have to wait until it's been out for at least a year before JSTOR let you access it. EJC, that's not the case. You can get instant access to something in EJC. So let's just try Festi. Let's see kind of what we get here. All right, so we still got a lot of hits. It's giving us a bunch of stuff that's not in English, which is kind of interesting. Probably because Festi is, is a word used in other languages. So let's try to limit this. Subjects. None of those are what I want. Let's go with okay, so much fewer, but still a lot, right? 2016, 2006. Shakespeare's World and Style of Consensus, Vicious Pranks, Tale of Twelfth Night. So still some really good, potentially useful things here, depending on what exactly it is we're wanting to work on. If you're interested in something with sexuality or gender and sexuality in Twelfth Night, this one might be really useful compared to drama 2014. Performance of character, I think that came up maybe in JSTOR, although I can't recall if JSTOR gets Shakespeare Bulletin or not. I think it does. So yeah, this would be really good if we wanted to do something on Festi, right? A lot of these mention Robert Armin because he was the actor in Shakespeare's Company who played the comic roles when Shakespeare wrote Twelfth Night. So we can really sort of clearly identify him as the actor in that role, and him being the actor Shakespeare wrote the character for, in very similar ways that we know Richard Burbage was the main tragic actor, and so Hamlet written for Burbage, right? Macbeth is clearly written for Burbage. Well, Festi was written for Robert Armin. And so there's been some good, interesting work done, with those connections and things. So lots of potential there. Let me go to listed journals. Promise I'm wrapping this up. Search for Shakespeare. Oh, it's actually giving a bunch of articles instead of just journals here. I did listed journals. All right, maybe I'll need to find them this way. Shakespeare Quarterly. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm going to go back for a second. I spotted something right as I was waiting for the page to update. So it's got only to 2019 on Shakespeare Quarterly. That's interesting. They must have changed. Project Muse is the actual database EJC is going through, and Shakespeare Quarterly must have changed, and Shakespeare Bulletin too maybe changed their contracts with them. I could have sworn we could still get current issues of Shakespeare Quarterly. Anyways, you can get really recent stuff. If a journal is still, um, accessible through EJC, you can get an article that just came out, which is really nice. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful. I know I covered a lot. It may have been a little bit overwhelming. Go back, rewind, rewatch any parts you think might be useful. If you have questions, let me know, right? I can't address things and clarify and help you out with stuff if I don't know what you would like help with. So let me know. And if you want to just chat with me about your topic and search terms you might use, or narrowing your topic, or further developing your thesis statement or anything, I'm happy to have those conversations with you even before our conferences, um, after that first draft. So please feel free to get a hold of me, and we'll go from there. All right. I'll see you soon.